A brief history of Magic cards featuring CML. So you just came out with a new book,
Absolutely.
and it's really cool. So what's up with it?
Thank you. Well, it's the first book about magic cards that has been printed in a very long time that's not just about the card game or the cards, but also about the culture of magic, which of course profoundly affects what you do when you're playing with the cards, as well as the history of magic, which is a lot of salacious stuff, a lot of stuff of mainstream interest, which I think Magic has unfortunately, with its writing especially, gotten away from in the recent past. And then, like, a lot of diversity, a lot of revelations, a lot of fun stuff from Magic's history that I think can interest any reader.
Yeah, so I don't have the paper physical book, but you sent me drafts
Mm-hmm.
over email, and for one thing, it made me emotional. There were parts where I was thought were funny, and then there were parts where I thought were sad, and then there were parts where I thought that maybe the problems with CML, But I think that is being a good writer is
Well,
making people feel something. And background on CML for those of you guys who don't know, CML is you wrote the Gawker article on how you won a Magic tournament on shrooms, which had that's one of the most viral Magic articles, several 100,000 reads, and same with this article on Amazon. So you're a better writer than a Magic player. Is that correct?
most definitely. But that's not a high standard to hold myself to. No, for someone like BBD, I think it would be a lot closer because he's a very good writer.
hmm
Um, but this is my talent. I'm not the best Magic player ever, but I do have enough knowledge to, have played the game competitively and to have gone to the Pro Tour
Uh,
and to, of course, won the tournament. So I have, I think, what is a really good perspective
you're
for someone who's
competitive.
too immersed in the game to lose perspective on the outside world of writing or to lose perspective on that market for writing, like in the Shrooms article. Which a conventional Magic article could not have reached. But also, I
Yeah,
played, a ton of Magic. It was my life, or a large portion of my life, for over 3 years.
yeah. I mean, your talent on one hand is the kind of mainstream articles, but it seems like you're one of the few people who even try to do it. You know,
Yeah,
like when I was writing for CFB, a lot of it was like, I'm going to write this deck list for Magic players. Occasionally, I would try to write something that was more useful to anyone who would read, but not a lot of people are trying to do that.
yeah, definitely. Well, I think that you're one of the most independent voices in Magic, and you were at the time as well. And it might have made Channel Fireball somewhat uncomfortable that you were writing these articles that brought in an extra context and showed, that their conventional articles were just about cards and were not necessarily bringing in new players into the fold in the same way that you were able to.
Yeah, well, those were some good times. Those were some times.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just think it's so interesting that something like the Shrooms article can have such reach, and there can be 20 million Magic players, maybe closer to 25 million Magic players worldwide at this point. And Wizards can be very focused on new player acquisition, and Wizards can have a bunch of celebrities, not just Felicia Day or Chris Cluey, but also like various metal bands who are huge proponents of the
Is that a
game.
thing now?
Yeah, most definitely. Like I have a
Oh,
list
nice.
of celebrities that are Magic players that I'm going to reach out to for the promotion of the book, and it's just not something that would occur.
So,
Uh,
can you
you know,
give us a brief synopsis of the book?
yeah, definitely. So, not to give too much of it away, but I guess there are excerpts on the Daily Dot which you can check out. We recently published one near the end of the book too, but it begins with me as like a little 9-year-old who's a little bit worried about playing Magic cards and like presenting it to my dad and having
I
him ask.
remember 9-year-old CML.
Yeah, dude, I
Keep
remember
going.
7-year-old Travis too.
I'm not trying to talk over you all the time. We got a lot of comments about that, but
Oh,
keep
it's
with
all
your
good.
story. 9-year-old CML.
I just want to, it's all good. No, I mean, we had our mutual friend, Will Martin, who gave you your first Magic cards and who was like one of my oldest friends. growing up, and like I was scared shitless of playing Magic cards, and I thought there was like a stigma, or if I bring them to school, people are going to take them away, and who are these kids that I've never met before in my magnet school milieu, and who are these like salesmen who are trying to sell me cards and so on. So it was actually like a whole different world, and not just like a fantasy world, but like a whole different world that was magical in real life. Like it had the Wizards of the Coast flagship in Seattle, just a mile and a half south of where my parents' house is, where I grew up, and a bunch of different people there, a bunch of new friends, and so on. And that's I intertwined that personal narrative of me with like the history of the game growing up, where Magic was at the very first like revolutionary, and Peter Atkinson, the CEO of Wizards, wanted to make games as big as the movies, and Richard Garfield, made a game that was up to those specifications.
Yeah, this game is as big as the movies.
Yeah, and like with a really diverse appeal and an alternative workplace where they wanted to sort of empower different types of people to make a different kind of corporate culture.
Hmm.
And so all of this like alternate lifestyle in the workplace and when my life is brought together, then of course the game matures and I mature. It starts to appeal to a narrow band of people to like try and look cool, as do I, because I'm a teenager at that point.
That's when I quit playing Magic because I was trying to look cool.
Yeah, I switched to StarCraft. I was such a cool kid.
Yeah.
um, and like I think a lot of people quit at that point. Like it was a commonplace thing. The game had a big commercial swoon, and in some ways a creative swoon in the 2000s. And the book is full of counterintuitive things, like R&D, of course, drove the quality of Magic for such a long time.
They still do.
I mean, yeah, they still do, but also like when they took it over to the point that they did in the early knots, the game also like sort of disappeared into its own universe, while the rest of the games industry was rapidly going ahead. So then New World Order happened, and I came back to the game a couple years after that, and um, played obsessively and competitively for a while, and I think that was the focus of Magic, like having competitive play prior to that. But then the game has exploded in popularity in
Yeah,
recent.
actually, thank you, marketing, for fixing that. Like, instead of
Yeah,
targeting kids, target adults and make the game for adults. Like, thank you. That we credit R&D a lot, but that was actually, it's not a children's card game. And once it's
no,
like, there's definitely not a, it's definitely for adults, then it's cool for all adults to play.
yeah. Well, you got to make it cool for all adults to play too, and I think diversity push is good, even if it's like maybe a little cynical that they're visiting Kaladesh exactly at the time that Hasbro wants to penetrate the Indian market or whatever.
Is that what
Um,
are they
yeah,
working on in the Indian market?
uh-huh.
That
Yeah, it's
was
totally true. There's some
obvious.
pesticides I can show you, but the book
Well,
is full. I mean, it's fine. Like commercialism and
I would go
creativity.
to a Grand Prix in India for sure.
Yeah, dude, it would be something, right? Well, you said you're leaving for 7 weeks to go on a trip, so that sounds very exciting. But I was in Europe for like the last 5.5, 6 weeks, and unlike last year where went to Brussels to play Magic, and I didn't see the inside of a convention center, and I went with my Magic buddy, and we had a great time. But that's sort of the denouement of the book is I end up going to the pro tour as the capstone of like my mediocre and minor Magic career, if you can even call it
Mm.
that. And I get somewhat disillusioned, and I don't think it's the conclusion. Not to give too much of it away, is it's not a matter of the people. It's a matter of just the way the game has evolved, and hopefully, there's a lot of hope in the future. Magic Digital Next is a thing, and Wizards is going to have to do stuff because the game industry has been revolutionary. But it's crazy that Magic was so far ahead of its time. On one hand, 23 years ago, it had
And it lags so far behind now.
yeah, yeah, but it's also crazy that it still exists.
I mean, I don't think that it's crazy personally because so many people are invested in it. It's propping it up to the pyramid scheme extreme. And beyond that, it's stable because it's just such a good game. It's really fun.
Mhm.
There's not a better card game. I don't believe it.
No,
There's
so
better
I
computer
mean,
games by far, but it's an amazing card game.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a good computer game in the near future too, which is something you can read about in my book.
Please, God, like I can't be on Magic Online every day. Like,
Yeah, dude.
make this easier
Yeah,
for me, Wizards.
yeah, right. Well, this is the thing. Like, I go to F&M to promote my book or whatever, and card stores are super happy to have it. It's if you have this in-person relationship, then it's obviously a lot more cordial than the internet sniping that'll occur, just like in the community at large. But if you talk to any random person who's not the most competitive player, who's just like there to draft or whatever, they'll always say, like, if you ask them, I want a dope video game. I want a sweet Magic the Gathering video game.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get extra diversity because it's so incredibly intimidating to get into a card shop. But like these are the issues that we talk about, like barriers to entry, how Magic became what it is, how the Pro Tour became what it is. You get an inside look at it that's say unbiased by commercial sentiment or a coaching fraternity or what have you, and you get the actual history of the game that isn't the same kind of corporate narrative that you see in Wizards. Like you get kind of what Magic articles were like maybe a decade ago when they were very funny.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
true.
that's a side,
Yes.
they were
Articles
really
used to be
funny,
funny, either tournament reports, stories, shit talking, a little
right?
risque at times,
Yeah,
and now it's totally like so safe. No one writes reports like that anymore.
right. Yeah, and the crazy thing is, well, what's Wizards' marketing strategy right now? It's
You
just
you tell me.
well, it's just based on new player acquisition,
Yes,
and
new player acquisition. I would
that's
say
great.
new
And,
demographic acquisition.
right, right, which is even better. And this has been
In some ways, it's better. It's growing pains for the old demographics.
Hey, another thing that you can read about in the book is how this anecdote actually comes from Jesper Myrfors, an old school magic artist, but how when they were doing like Captain Sisse style promotion, one of the people at Wizards marketing, I think at the time, said, "Why are we having this black woman promoted? It's not the demographic we're going after." In the early 21st century, well, it's not only a poisonous thought; it's also like terrible from a marketing perspective. And now, of course, they're amending things, which is great. But the crazy thing is that like the Magic media isn't, including the mothership, isn't embodying the new player acquisition in the way that I think it could. Like
I feel
something like
like they are. I mean, there's two. It's a tough issue because there's two sides. Like, I mean, I definitely noticed that there's way more diverse cast at the mothership now
mhm,
because they're selecting for it,
right,
which means they're selecting against the previous demographic.
mhm,
It means you're advantaged if you are of the new demographic, and you're disadvantaged if you're old. And I get that. Hey, it's good in the long run to bring in more people under the fold, but it's also like there's also this narrative that people feel like their white mandom is threatened or whatever. And I mean, I'm not a white man, but like I have sympathy for that because it's also like, um,
we also think Magic was so male dominated and so like white male
mhm.
dominated for such a long time, and like this was a safe space for, or quote, safe space unquote, for like a lot of people who felt shat on by society. But
Yeah.
we get into that
And now
too.
they're being shat on by wizards in a certain respect.
Eh, I think they'll be fine.
I think they'll
I
be
mean,
fine. Most people don't notice this is going on or don't care.
oh yeah, I mean,
Vast majority. I don't care really. Whatever.
well, what I think like is interesting is to say like Wizards is amping up their efforts to like represent more people, and by having more diversity, that's like a goal in and of itself. Not in the sense of like the Hillary campaign, where we can have a coalition of people to be under a terrible capitalist system at the same time necessarily, but like in a way that should genuinely benefit the game. And its market share in its entire culture, which is what I'm trying to do with this book. I'm trying to take all the really good stories in Magic, because there were some really good stories like a decade ago or even now that aren't even getting printed, right?
Yes. So where can we find it? Where can we buy it? What's the URL?
So the URL for my shop is etsy.com, and I think it's shop. Let me check really quickly. Etsy.com, and it's /shop/CMLADL. That's CMLADL. You can cop the poster, Fantasy
We'll
Map of
put
Seattle.
the link in the description.
Yeah. So to talk really quickly, we have like a little poster
Uh-huh.
of Seattle we're selling. We have little pins too, and we also have the book. We also have an EPUB on Amazon. I have a bunch of promotions coming up. Going to reach out to Magic playing celebrities who play Magic as well, and hopefully, bridge that divide, which is the whole point of the book, and have some more media appearances and talk about all the crazy things that have happened over the last 23 years.
Nice. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, man, I'm excited. Thank you so much for coming on.
dude, thanks for having me.
I have to run, otherwise I'd like to keep talking, but we've done this before, we will do it again.
No problem. We'll catch up later. Have a great trip. I'll ping you sometime in the near future. 7 weeks, huh? Very exciting.
5 weeks and then 2 weeks in Seattle, so we could do an in-person collab in the end of November.
Yeah, super cool. No, I'll catch up with you then. Good luck at the Pro Tour, and yeah, talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.